Thank you, Chairman. 15 members present. I have apologies from Councillors Carson and Councillor Tuckfield. Thank you.
Councillor Scobie?
Yeah, not so much an apology, Chair. I'll be taking my leave here about 3:15. I've got a weekly surgery in Stranraer that I've got to get back to.
I hope you survive it, sir. Councillor Ferguson?
I've done up to now, Chair.
Apologies, Councillor Collins as well, please.
Thank you.
Declarations of interest? No. Minute of the meeting of 6th of February. Happy to move. We're misled there by the cut and paste merchants. It should be the 17th of June. Move on to item 4, Community Customer Services, Outturn Report 2013-14, report by the Director of Community and Customer Services. The report provides members with an overview of financial performance against the budget for this department, the financial year 2013-14. Shows an overspend of 29k. The officers will be redressing this in the current financial year. The reasons for the overall spending position is in relation to community facilities review and a shortfall in income generated DG1 in advance of planned remedial works. An update on these works and the financial implications are to be reported to the next meeting of this committee. Lucy Taylor, the CCS Finance Officer, here to answer any questions from members. Have any questions? Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of things. One of my colleagues who isn't here today, she's put her apologies in. See in the bottom of page 11, you've got a reduction in payments to other bodies. It comes under housing. There was £20,000 there. What I can understand of that was because of a break in the contract. Just an explanation on that was one of the things. And the extra 999k invested into leisure and sport. Just got a further breakdown. I think it was touched on in some of the report, but just a further breakdown on what that actually is. Other than that, for the 29k, the points, less than 1 percentile actually, I think that's really good news. But the 2 points, if we get clarity on that, please.
Good afternoon, members. I'm Lucy.
Good.
Touching on the first one, £120,000 reduction in the payments to outside bodies. We were actually challenged in terms of that reduction in payment, and we had to go through a process whereby we entered into a termination period, and that resulted in a shortfall in the reduction of £20,000. So that's where that came from, sir. I didn't quite catch the second one, Councillor Carruthers. It was about, maybe Richard pick up on it. Did you pick? It's about leisure and sport.
Absolutely. So it's page 10, leisure and sport. You've got your community customer services outturn summary. The original budget, it shows 4471, and there's a budget readjustment of 999, which took it up to nearly 5.5 million. Just what that 99 was, that was extra money going in there as far as I can see. And just in regards to the 20k penalty, one of the questions that came in the back for Councillor Tuckfield, it was in a group meeting on Monday, was what are the learning points from that, if that was the case? Well, how will we apply that in future?
I think, sir, it wasn't so much a learning point. There was a legal challenge made, and we were required to avoid the legal challenge taking us much further down the road. So we effectively negotiated a reduction, a small reduction. The learning point is to make sure that we do our impact assessments properly. And I think that's a learning point across the council.
Councillor Geddes.
It's very...
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that my understanding in terms of the leisure and sport difference and the increase is purely an accounting issue in terms of the 3G pitches and the revenue that's drawn down from the national governing bodies.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's going back to the issue of the £20,000, and Mr Haswell's talking about impact assessments. Now, in the good old days, we didn't use, and being a member of a profession which has been vilified over the centuries for its use of jargonese, I'm surprised that he's using modern management speak. The blunt fact of the matter, I would put it, Chair, is that somebody somewhere did not do their homework. We didn't check the situation before we undertook this course of action. In layman's speak, is that the case?
Yes.
I'm grateful, Chair. So in other words, those responsible have had it quietly brought to their attention that, you know, that's not the way we operate in the future.
Yes.
Councillor Galloway.
Thank you. I'm just looking at 5.2, and it's the Civic Pride Community Commissioning Pilot for 100,000. And I just wonder where we are with that. You say, you know, it's currently being finalised for further member consideration. Well, it's now, you know, we're sort of third of the way through the year. By the time it comes back to us, we'll be halfway through. I just wonder what's the hold-up, really, and what we're doing with it.
My understanding is we're commissioning this work, Chairman. My understanding is that the work has taken some time to plan. It's going to be planned into the Commission by our colleagues in DG First. I can check that up for members and come back to you. That's the advice we got. There was a considerable amount of work done. There has been £600,000 spent. There's another £100,000 to spend. So we're 3 years. We're at the third stage. We're almost completed, but there were delays at the beginning because of planning issues. No, I don't mean physical planning issues. I mean just planning the work issues.
Okay. Councillor Maitland.
Could I just ask about on page 10, Chairman, the community and customer services service analysis with respect to the area committees. These overspends and underspends for any particular reason? Could you possibly help me with that? The revised budget, the budget changes show quite significant changes, and then in addition to which there appear to be variances. I wonder if I could have some help on that.
I think the revised changes relate to reductions in staff, ma'am.
Sorry, Chair. I mean, I think the Director's absolutely right. And in addition to that, the variances, obviously, there's some supporting narrative. But in regard to some of the overspends, the issues in regard to the likes of DG1 and loss of recovery in income, that's obviously reported through local area committee reports, as would any specific issue that is significant through each of the other three area committees.
Okay. Welcome back, Councillor Maitland.
Yes, I think so. Would we have known about those? Would we have known about those changes in staffing?
No, for the most part, through you, Chair, no. I mean, I think where we're at in terms of the budget development process, through our support in terms of ERVS, through the changes that we've made in terms of efficiencies and effectiveness, we've had to transfer resource across departments through the likes of resource planning to improvement engagement, etc., etc. So, no, for the most part, what we've done is react staffing-wise in terms of the needs and demands of the service as the year has progressed.
Okay. Councillor Scobie. Use your mic.
Mr. Owen, yeah. Again, page 10, Chair, under strategic housing and commissioning, where the original budget in 2013-14 sets off with nothing. I realise that it may be with another department at that particular time, being with social work in housing, but I do notice that, you know, on the budget, revised budget rather, it was 5689, but then the final outcome shows a 566, and that's in millions, Chair, and again bracket of a 23,000 savings. And again, my question is one that I've continually raised here with the Director in terms of our homeless accommodations, whether indeed that we are up to speed with them in terms of refurbishment, redecorating on that year, and that we are starting off this year ahead of the game. That's my first question, Chair. I'll ask Alan when you come back.
Can I say, Chairman, that budget line relates to strategic housing and commissioning, not the homelessness service. Strategic housing and commissioning came over to CCS at the beginning of financial year 13-14. We achieved the budget, which was £5.68 whatever million. The variance is due to the fact that in strategic housing we did not appoint a member of staff. We're currently, because we knew that we were going to be acquiring homelessness, we determined that we'd wait and see what the staff complement would look like and have a proper look at it in the event that £23,000 will be absorbed this year. In terms of the answer to the question on the accommodation, I can confirm that we've now issued a brief and we will be engaging people to go and get on with the job. But I'm quite happy to speak to Councillor Scobie offline on that one, sir.
Scobie?
Yeah, Chair, I would hope we're not speaking offline, that we get a report on that we are up to speed with and that the homeless accommodations are to a standard, or we would do not use them. So we would hope to get, I'll request a report at the earliest opportunity on that one. Grateful for the explanation given. Just again, a clarification on another issue and whether it should be in this budget heading, and that's to the savings that were expected to be achieved in the integration. And I do not recollect the report that Councillor Geddes-McComb-Foster and I asked for in terms of the savings of the £200,000. It may be it'll go to P&R, but that's on the integration of the services and the dilapidation for a property, etc. We have asked for that report, and to my recollection, I don't remember seeing that report, but that again may go to P&R. It's that clarification, Chair.
In terms of integration, if I can refer members to page 11, the saving to be applied in terms of the integration and staffing was £126,000, and that's been fully achieved. In terms of buildings, there is an outstanding remit to come back to. I think it is the P&R committee in relation to dilapidations, and that work is ongoing, and that will come to the P&R committee as I understand it.
Councillor Ferguson?
Thanks very much, Chair. Page 12, the Policy Development Tracker, the Talented Athlete Programme. To me, the sums don't actually match the pros in the box at the far right, because if the forecast spend for this year is 11, but it was 30, supposed to be only 19 last year, that to me is a reduction rather than investment in individuals. Is it just a typo?
Thank you, Chair. No, the allocation was 30k for the year. We committed 19. Therefore, there's an additional. The remaining 11 will carry forward in addition to the 30 for the next year. So we will actually have in effect 41k for this next year. It's the 11k of the shortfall which will carry forward.
That's my point. Yeah. So the forecast spend for 14-15 should be 41k, not 11.
The spend for this next year will be 41. I think this table refers purely to last year's budget and the residue which will carry forward. But you're right, in effect, Councillor Ferguson, it'll be 41 this year.
Any further questions?
So can we actually reflect that then, please? Because I remember the public reading that would actually see that as a reduction rather than an increase.
Can I say, I've got to be careful here, I'm not an accountant, but we're dealing with an expenditure profile to the end of last financial year. Any member of the public looking forward would look at our spending profile for the current financial year, and it will clearly show that we're going to spend 41,000, sir. I won't be awkward with Councillor Ferguson, but there are accountancy rules that we've got to comply with, and I think what we're saying is that must paint a picture for 2013-14, and you look forward to 2014-15, and there's papers will come forward to this committee about that on the expenditure monitoring for 2014-15.
Can I come back, Chair, because I understand that entirely, but the heading for the column is forecast spend for 2014-15, and it's showing 11.
I would agree with Councillor Ferguson. I think what should be there is carried forward to, rather than forecast spend, because forecast spend is what you should be spending that financial year. That should be carried forward to 2014-15, and that would make sense. That way the figures add up, because if you put 41 in there, that would muck up the figures. So I think the title needs to be changed.
I'll take the advice back to Section 95, officer, sir.
Yep.
You asked for sort of any further questions, Chairman, and I do have a further question with respect to the issue that I've just raised, because I don't know where I would go and look to see what the staffing effects were upon the opportunistic savings taken from ERVS. I am aware that there was a line, a budget line, on the savings to do with integration, libraries integration and various other staffing matters, but I think that members probably, unless I haven't seen the information, members don't know what is actually happening in each of the areas. And I would request that we're supposed to note what's happened, but I actually can't tell in terms of detail, Chairman. I can see the figures on page 10, but I don't actually know the detail. So I'd be grateful to have that detail, and I imagine that other members would probably quite like to know as well. After all, Annandale and Eskdale appear to have had 80,000 removed from their particular budget and have overspent by 39. I think they'd probably like to know what was going on.
Does Councillor Maitland want to know the names of the staff who retired? We have lists of names of staff who retired and have not been replaced. I'm quite happy to provide that.
May I come back? No, I don't need the names. I need to know the actual types of staff and whether they have been replaced or what are the impacts upon the service in each of those areas.
I don't have that detail today. This is just a budget monitoring report, but I'm quite happy to supply that detail.
Councillor Connolly.
Jimmy, just a comment in regards to this actual. I compared that with the ABB books that we got yesterday, which I would say are made up to date, and it doesn't. It's not the same. There's differences in it. There's change. So this is slightly out of date, I would say. So and there's obviously aye, of course.
I think Councillor Crothers is hitting on a reasonable point, Chairman. You might find that the ABB book does give you an explanation of where the staff changes have been.
Move on to the recommendations. 2.1, happy. 2.2, 2.3, very much. Move on to item 5, which is the Community Customer Service Budget 2014-15. This report forms part of the Council's budget process for 2015-16 and provides activity-based budget information which will be used to inform the budget process for 2015-16 and the subsequent 2 years. The main issues affecting the service as we go forward is the fact that staff costs account for 46% and a further 12% is allocated to property costs. 35% of expenditure is payment to other bodies. Savings therefore requires to be found from a very small proportion of the budget. And this is one of the reasons why it was agreed at the council meeting we'd be looking to restructure the council and undertake cross-cutting service reviews. Just ask Mr Haswell, get anything to add to the report?
Chairman, I'd prefer just to answer members' questions. I mean, I don't want to read the report to them. The key issues that I would draw to members' attention are the ones that you've already identified in paragraph 3.9 of the report. Clearly there is a saving to be made. Hopefully the ABB book gives members a lot of information which enables them to look at the services we provide and determine what, if anything, we can stop doing or where we can reduce what we're doing or whatever. We, as you say, we are doing a major service review which will not only affect the CCS but will affect other parts of the council, and that may be used to give thought to the proposed restructuring which the Chief Executive has announced. So these are matters that are ongoing, but I think hopefully Richard or I and Annie can answer any questions that members may have on the specifics of the information in the book.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks. Thanks, Chairman. It's in page 17 and it's the proposed budget process. I just wanted to ask Alec just to, it's for halfway doing June 2000, it's even July 2014 and that's where we are. Where the members particularly get involved, I've read it, I think I've got a clear understanding of it, but I think for the sake of members' consideration, this, again, we look at cross-referencing this to the ABB, what we got yesterday, a lot of the parts that are in it. So we've got a clear understanding from here on in where the members get involved, how they should get involved. If you could just outline that for us, please.
Well, currently what we're doing, we've given members the ABB book. That's in July 2014. All services are getting that. We are now working on draft service review options and draft savings options. These will be identified through discussions with members. We then move into September and we'll come forward to service committees with where we are with savings options, where we are with service reviews, and members will be asked to approve the service review templates and the way forward on the service reviews. I think the leader of the council intimated at the last meeting that he intended to have meetings at a political level in relation to service reviews, council priorities, and ultimately the budget. So that's where we currently are, sir. We will continue to report to committees as and when we, in accordance with that timetable. If any, obviously the offer I think was made by the leader, if any group or individual wants to come forward and discuss any issue with the officers, Paul Garrett and I are kind of taking the lead on that, and we'll be happy to facilitate any discussions that you would want.
Just your one small point when you referenced discussion with members, where explicitly was that? You said that you look to come forward with discussion with members. Maybe your last question answered part of the answer, actually answered that.
It's not explicit, sir. That's for members to determine if they wish to engage in that process.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. I don't normally ask hypothetical questions. I have enough difficulty dealing with reality. But, you know, if you look at paragraph 3.2, sir, one of the key elements of the agreed process is the detailed review and agreement at service committees of service budgets for the current financial year, including detailed presentation and discussion on activity-based budgets. What would happen, Chair, if the members of the service committee failed or chose not to agree the service budget for this year? I'm not suggesting for one moment, sir, that we should go down that route, but it occurs to me that the way that's phrased, it almost begs the question, well, that's okay, but what would happen in these circumstances if the members of the service committee said, no, we're not prepared to agree that budget?
The council set the budget in February, sir, and I would take the matter back to the council, and it would be for the council to determine.
Grateful for the response, Chair.
Councillor Maitland.
Well, just to I suppose, link in the proposed budget process, the draft, well, the service review toolkit requires intervention or involvement with members at two occasions. One is when we're dealing with the scope of a review, and the other one is when the options come forward. So, I mean, I would certainly anticipate, I presume, that as a matter of course, groups would be consulted when those reviews come forward, because that's what we have agreed as a system.
Yeah, in terms of the scope for the service reviews, we are and will be consulting, for example, the communities review that I'm taking forward through Harry Hay. I'll be coming round the groups immediately after the recess with a view to putting a report to this committee in September. The scope will then be agreed by this committee, will then do the work, and the outcome will come back to committee. There's no question of that, ma'am.
Councillor Scobie, then Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, Chair, it's funny, not so much for the hypothesis that unless they're posed, but dealing with it in reality. And I appreciate that we're looking at the ABB and what could form the budget setting for next year, 2015-16. But it's to put down the marker, Chair. I look at 3.10, where the rest reference to homeless services has now been transferred from social work to CCS, and that relates to my earlier remarks in that our budget should reflect that we are providing a quality service for homeless people, and that the standards are maintained, and in that respect I see that we're still looking at the same £5.6 million or 5.8, which would recognise an increase. So it does predicate on the actual report that we await. And my next one is to, again putting down the marker on, give me a minute, Chair. This issue has to do, and I just can't find page, Chair, but it has to do with the strategic framework and in relation to antisocial behaviour, which I know there is a current review going on in terms of our statutory powers and responsibilities as to what we should be delivering. And as I speak, then for me, and I hope the whole other 46 members, there is huge discrepancies in the antisocial behaviour service, where we seem to close it down come 10 o'clock at night. So that also will have ramifications on the incoming budget in terms of delivery of service and what our powers and responsibilities are as a statutory body. So these both must run alongside any budget setting process in terms of reports that are to come forward, not hypothetically but in reality.
Can I say Councillor Scobie's identified what I consider to be an issue here? I don't see a line for homelessness in this budget. I assume it's not been transferred across. I'll have to go back to colleagues in finance and ask them what happened to the several £1 million that I expected to see in the budget, and it is in the budget because we discussed it at the last meeting here. It's just not been picked up in this ABB book. So I will, thanks for that, I'll bring that forward. In terms of antisocial behaviour, yeah, Councillor Scobie's quite right. There will be a report coming back on strategy, tactics and operational issues on antisocial behaviour. We are getting to grips with that at the moment. And my understanding is that we will be looking at the fact that we have a delivery and commissioning, or a commissioning and delivery model in place. I'm not convinced it's working, but can you say any more than that?
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of things. One's in the proposed budget process, and first I'm not going to comment on the actual ABB thing itself. I'm intrigued at page 18 for the December and January actions, where it's actually got potential release of other political parties' budget proposals to full council in December, and then again formal scrutiny of potentially other political groups. The word potentially is a bit scary for me, because that actually would suggest that somebody actually has the ability to interpret that as they see fit. Whilst I accept the administration's pledge to talk and have political engagement on the budget process, this needs to be explicit, and this maybe needs to go back and just take the word potential out there, because any political group who's going to put forward a budget proposal should actually have it ready for full council in December, that's my understanding, and then again it should be there available for scrutiny in January. So it's not a potential, it's actually if they have a wish or mind to do so, then they have the right to do so. It's not that's a bit of a worry. That's the first thing. And the second bit's a bit nitpicking, but on page 19, the Public Bodies Joint Work in Scotland is now an Act of 2014, it's not a bill. Thank you.
Can I say, sir, the budget development process was agreed by the full council at its meeting on the 6th of February. This is not a new document, this is the document that was produced at that time. I think the word potential is open to interpretation, but I think what it means there is that if any political group wishes to produce a budget, there is a potential to do it in December 2014.
That's exactly my point, Chair. If a political group is wanting to prepare its own budget and put it forward for consideration, it should be formal, it should be done, and it should be ready for December, not potentially. It should be ready. That's my point.
But there's no requirement for any political group to put forward a budget apart from the administration. So potentially you can, potentially you can't, if you like.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at page 79 and 98 ABB stuff, and it's to help Alex out and looking at the homeless side of things, where he was talking about millions of pounds coming in. That's actually, if you look at that bottom activity-based budget side of things, the budget estimates homelessness 3,414,000. Yeah, to help you out there, Alex. Okay.
Any further questions? Councillor Maitland.
Yes, Chairman, I am a little confused, I think, about the stats and the benchmarking that we've got here. It's page 50, it's all to do with page 59, it's libraries. I am amazed that Wigtonshire should be so much more expensive than the Stewartry and Annandale Library Service. I think I just don't completely understand that. I'm also astonished that the Robert Burns Film Theatre is £139,000 in costs, whereas the Ryan Centre is 78. And going on from this morning, Chairman, we had a report on statistics to do with leisure and sport, and indeed the use of over 60s for libraries, and frankly, they didn't really make a lot of sense to me. Because we didn't have the input. There seemed to be a problem with. Help me. There was a problem with those who were there. There was a problem with data, and there was a problem with systems. That meant there was a problem with the collection of data. Can somebody help me on that, please?
I can help you on the 60+ data. There's an issue with the library management system, which has been investigated by the company who provide us with the system at the moment. We're trying to get to the bottom of that.
So, on that basis then, can we rely on the stats and benchmarking that we've got here in front of us?
Yeah, because that related to one specific issue, as I understand it. These statistics are gathered across the CCS service. A lot of them are done by manual record keeping in certain instances, but the figures that we put forward are the figures that we're using and we're depending on for the budget.
Chair, with your blessing, I'm happy to come back on the other question Councillor Maitland raised in terms of the Robert Burns Film Theatre and the Ryan Centre, and maybe just to comment on the statistics as well, if I may. Certainly all of the costs associated with the film theatre at the Ryan Centre, some of which in terms of the energy, etc., are obviously built into the Ryan Centre leisure and sport side of the business, whereas the Robert Burns Film Theatre is a service in isolation, as it were. So that might account for some of the question in regard to the level of budget. I think in terms of the statistics and the figures, certainly in terms of our Dumfries and Galloway information presented in the ABB document, they reflect the actual costs of the service provided against the actual budget allocated, and I think we're pretty confident in regard to the level of data that we collect and the stats in that regard, aside from the odd blip in terms of the challenges that we've had. What I would say, I'm be happy to take members' advice and guidance in regard to this matter, but certainly using the SIP for statistics as a benchmark, as a tool to benchmark performance in isolation across our comparator authorities can be a bit distorted and lead to inaccurate conclusions, because we're not necessarily dealing with like for like. And I can give members a number of examples there. So I think where I'm at in terms of the service, talking to the director and looking at the ABB and the outturn in terms of last year, we're doing a great deal of work at the moment in looking at our performance within A, leisure and sport, B, museums. And members have already requested a report looking at benchmarking in museums, arts and libraries, CSC registration, integrated services. I'd be more than happy to bring some papers back to members that goes into much more detail in regard to benchmarking, particularly against comparator authorities, because I think looking at SIPFA in isolation doesn't necessarily paint the fullest of pictures.
When you want to come back?
Well, that would be extremely helpful, Chairman. I do think that would be useful. I was completely bamboozled by the cost of museums per visit. I mean, looking at Argyll and Bute in comparison to, for argument's sake, us, I don't understand how that works. So, yeah, that would be useful. Thank you.
Thompson and Councillor Geddes.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually a question relating to attendances and costs by area facilities, page 38 and 39. Page 38's got the figures as reported for Audit Scotland, and page 39's got the ones that's for our information, but it includes the figures from Mothers. And I was just wondering, is there any way that we could get a breakdown of the expenditure relating to the MUGA figures and attendances? Because obviously that's something that isn't reported to Audit Scotland, so I'm just wondering if we can get that clarity for those figures as well.
Happy to provide that, Chair, absolutely.
Just a very minor observation, Chair, with your leave, sir. Page 27, it talks about following outputs. It's under the heading of cross-service sector working. It says percentage of active community councils, communities with a community resilience plan in place, 40.45% for 2013-14. Actually, in a Wigtonshire context, that is now 100%. In fact, I think it was 100% even at the time that this was assembled. So that's well, but the more cynical, of course, would say that the further from Dumfries you are, the more self-reliant you've got to be. Hence the reason that the good folk in the Shire buckle to and I'll not say any more, Chair. It's an unworthy remark.
It's been noticed your own great reliance. Councillor Carruthers and then Councillor Ferguson.
It was answered my question, Chairman, with somebody else's, so thanks for that.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually page 44, the cost per attendance at sports facilities. I understand the need to have a consistency in comparator authorities, but the other comparator authorities I'm seeing there, I don't see any of them actually have an ice rink, which is a huge cost. And I'm actually, because actually, I'm not having a pop at the officers here, this is actually totally the opposite, because to keep it within reason or close to some of these other authorities who don't have that very expensive facility to run is actually a credit to them. So would we be able to get some figures of comparative costs for those authorities that actually do have a public-owned ice rink, not a private-owned ice rink?
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. I think that's a really good example of the point I was trying to make, perhaps not very well earlier on. What we're dealing with here is a snapshot of our comparator authorities, but it bears no consideration for the number of facilities, the type of facilities, how those facilities are operated, whether they be a trust and therefore relief of NNDR, etc., etc. What we need is a level playing field. My team are doing that work right now. I'd be delighted to bring that paper back for members' information.
But I take it, we didn't choose these comparator authorities anyway, did we? These were foisted on us, that's a problem. And I think the other problem that was highlighted was the SIPFA figures, which 20 years ago, the only reason we're accurate, we could compare district authority services with another district, similar regional services. Since the integration of all authorities into unitary authorities, they've all got different ways of working, and therefore even try to make comparisons. I mean, the way we've integrated libraries and other services has not been done elsewhere in Scotland, and therefore trying to make comparisons is a lot harder than it was in the past. Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. It's relating to the same page. It's actually to do with note 3 regarding the legal and technical costs associated with the ongoing investigation of DG1. I just wonder, is there any sort of narrative that would provide a sense of how much our figure might be skewed by that, and is there any way to separate that out so we won't be reflected in the benchmarking figures?
Members, as the Director said, members will receive a report, the next CCS committee, on the update in regard to DG1, including the ongoing legal and technical issues and costs. I will speak to a colleague, Paul Garrett, about how that might be reflected differently in these figures, but needless to say that again, that's a significant figure that distorts things a wee bit, but I'm happy to take that back to Mr Garrett, Chair.
Any further queries? Councillor Gordon?
It's just it's back to the Robert Burns and the Rhine Centre film theatres, and I just wonder why we subsidise them. Why don't people pay to go and see a film like they do in Newton Stewart or do in Dumfries down the road here? I mean, I can understand the museums and I can understand Gracefield to a degree, but I don't get why we're subsidising people going to watch James Bond.
I'm being very careful here. You need a political answer to that. Members have chosen to subsidise.
To do that. So is it something? Yeah. So we could look. I just kind of think it's a strange one to be subsidising. That's all.
Councillor Maitland?
I'm transfixed. I mean, do they not pay at all? Sure, yeah, they do, yes.
Oh, they pay, but they're subsidised by, if you look at the things at page 50, and, you know, we've got other privately run things down in Whithorn, is it? They've got one little theatre down there, Whithorn.
What have we got in Whithorn, Chair? What's the question?
Keep up, Councillor Geddes. I just think it's a strange thing for us to be, it's not a lot of money, I do understand that, but I just think, you know, when times are hard, you've got to kind of look at things, and I'm not sure that this is what we should be subsidising.
Chairman, I seem to recall quite a lengthy debate during the budget process in terms of fees and charges. And that was a member decision, so...
Did nothing. Councillor Maitland?
Chairman, it was really just looking at the next page over, page 45, with respect to the cost of parks and open spaces. Now, we're not talking, are we, dare I say, for the dreaded grass cutting here, we're talking about physical running of parks, is that right? Could I have a little bit of help with that?
Yes, Chair. My understanding is that this is not in relation to grounds maintenance. This is in relation to activities and games in parks.
Any further questions? Can we turn to recommendation? Accept 2.1 and agree 2.2. Okay. Move on to item 6. Maitland?
Yeah, sorry. I thought, with respect to Councillor Ferguson's and my questions, I thought we were going to get a further report, bringing more information on benchmarking and stats. Is that not an extra? That's fine.
Officers,
okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
Move on to item 6. This is the now year 2 of the programme of integration. Lessons we learned from year 1, and this report gives us an overview of the work to date and details of proposed work for the year. And this work will include public consultation opening hours. Hopefully Annie Thompson will be here to answer any questions that members may have. Members, any questions? Councillor Dryburgh?
Thanks very much, Chair. There's not so much on this one, but it's one in my particular ward in Langham, because integration of services is quite difficult in Langham because of the buildings that's actually there. I'm just wondering if I can get an update on where we actually are with that, because there was discussions when we talked about a community development trust and that in Langham about holding things off until that was actually in place. Now, there has been discussions between the three sort of major groups within Langham and the Eskdale area. However, there doesn't seem to be a business plan coming forward from those three particular groups in a quick manner. They are in sort of 6-monthly sort of transition. But I'm just wondering if I can get an update of where we are with that, because that's causing some concern on the ground, as you can imagine.
Chairman, can I say I've just been looking at this very recently. We are moving forward with it. The establishment of the community trust is well developed. We have 3 different groupings in Langham who are now cooperating and will be taking this forward. Officers are meeting on a regular basis with the community groups. I think Councillor Dryburgh may be alluding to the issue of the mission hall. Would that be correct, sir? No? I think we will be looking to the community to come up, and other partners to come up with a proposal for that. That's something that will come into the business plan in the trust. There was some time taken to establish the trust to make sure that we were taking the community with us and we weren't being seen to, how can I put this, favour one trust in existence against another. So we've had some fairly delicate negotiations there, sir. But they are moving forward, I can assure him of that. Quite happy to speak to you about the detail.
That'll be fine, Chair.
Councillor Geddes?
Well, thanks very much, Chairman. It's in paragraph 3.3, sir. We're talking about work is also in progress to provide the full range of customer services in 9 communities which currently only have a library to ensure equitable, proportionate delivery of services across Dumfries and Galloway. And there are 3 there mentioned in Mid-Galloway, Chair. Now, let me say at the outset, that is not only essential, it's commendable that this work, in fact, is taking place. But I think it's absolutely imperative in the back of the point that Councillor Driver has raised and Mr Haswell's response. There has got to be a mechanism built into such processes to ensure that elected members are kept informed of, the progress and what's taking place. Now, it may very well be a somewhat less formal mechanism than a report to full committee, Chair, but Councillor Nicholl and I were at a community meeting this morning in Glentrool regarding an issue which will be coming up at P&R committee on Friday, sir. And that was one of the major gripes that we heard this morning as well, that there appeared to be a deficit from the point of view of the work that was being undertaken by council officials and elected members being aware just exactly of the various issues and the processes involved in that. So I think that it would be helpful. I don't want to get involved in operational matters. It's neither appropriate nor, as far as I'm concerned, would I wish to pursue that objective. That's drudgery that I was freed from a long number of years ago, and I've no intentions of ever going back there, and you and I both exactly know what I mean, Chair. But I think still that there is some sort of process that we should be looking at to ensure, in fact, that elected members are A, up to speed, and B, can have an input into the process as it develops. I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thanks for your time.
That is the intention, sir. That was one of the lessons learned from last year. And Annie Thompson and Karen Brownlee will be keeping local members involved and aware of what's happening.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. We act under the National Standards Community Engagement, and I'm a bit of a loss here with this paper. Which of the 3 public engagement forums are we actually using here? Are we consulting? Are we informing? Are we involving? Because this seems to be a bit of everything. And actually I would welcome an answer to that question, because that might then lead to something else.
I think it is a mix of all 3, sir. Where we have got a definite decision from the council in terms of the budget development process, we're informing. We are consulting on things like opening hours, when facilities would be open, and you'll see in the report we actually talk about community feedback being don't open between 8 o'clock and 9 because nobody uses it. And try to remember the third one. We are consulting, we are informing, and we are engaging. So we're covering all 3 issues. We're following the 10 standards on community engagement, the national standards on community engagement.
Mr. Ferguson.
Thanks. I thought that would be the answer. But my problem here is that in some instances, that Councillor Geddes just talked about, that him and the fellow councillor were at this morning, the community probably think they've been left with fait accompli because they're actually sitting there and the decision's been taken. So they're not being consulted, they're being informed of what's going to happen, and there's a huge difference. So if in the areas, can we be assured in the areas where we can consult before we make a decision that we actually do have proper public consultation, right? And from there, inform them at the same time, consult them, and then use their consultation to actually then take forward to an involvement from there on in. Because there's no doubt about it, if we can actually get the local people on board in any project from day one, it's much more chance of success than us parachuting in and telling them what we're going to do with their community.
I think, sir, we're learning from previous experience on that, and Councillor Ferguson's quite right, and that's what we are endeavouring to do. Sometimes if you don't give the community the answer they're looking for, they say you're not engaging with them. That's a difficulty, but we are engaging with our communities and talking to community groups about the way forward, particularly in relation to the community facilities review. We're not making the savings we said we would on the community facilities review simply because we are taking the time and trouble to make sure that we take the community groups with us.
Can I come back, Chair? Thanks. Absolutely. But you would hope that when a council decision has been taken, that proper public engagement took place before the council decision was made, and this is an implementation phase. So there is no need then to actually consult further. But it's not clear here which of these different functions are information which are consulting and which are involving. That's what I'm asking for. Let's make it crystal clear so people understand.
I take the point, sir. I think the point I would make back to Councillor Ferguson is, when did the chicken become the egg, or when did the egg become the chicken? I am not going to start creating a furore in a community with a proposed budget saving to have members tell me it's not happening, or vice versa. So we have an issue in there, but we are trying to address it, and I think we have managed to address it in a number of communities where I personally am getting feedback from individuals saying, oh, we thought this was going to happen, but you're actually saying something slightly different, and we're comfortable with what you're saying. That's because we're learning from the community, sir.
Just on that 3.16, I'd like to ask Danny the question. Do you think the period 21st of July to 9th is too time restricting? Because I know a certain area in the Dispute last year that they thought that was a local holiday period and not enough people would have time to reply.
Yeah, I can take that on board and increase the time period, given that we're in the holiday period.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, just on the point that Councillor Ferguson made, I'm a little bit confused because I don't know if he was asking if it's okay to okay a decision that's already been taken by the council in relation to, for example, integration of libraries, registration and customer services. The task of the officers, and I've only been to one of these, but basically a decision was taken by the council to integrate the three services. But the way that I seen the approach was that they actually said, this is what we have to do. How do we do that? And the one that I went to, there was a two-way consultation. There was ideas that were fed forward, which the officers took on board. So a little bit confused that obviously they can't change the decision that the council has taken with regards to the integration, but they can shape what that service will look like and the facilities that will be used within that community. And as I said, the example I've seen, that was a two-way communication, and there was a lot of good ideas from the community that was taken forward, and that's been developed into the final plan.
Councillor Thompson, then Councillor Nick.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo the earlier councillor's point about the consultation period, because obviously that's the busiest, or the holiday period. All the community councils are off, we're in recess, and the public are most likely away having a holiday, so you'd probably get the least feedback of any time of year possible there. But the other point was just to do with it's to do with community involvement. I mean, what I see when I read this is very much the choice at the end of the conveyor belt is like three options available. I don't know what those three options are in terms of 3.16. So there's obviously going to be three options that have gone through a process somewhere. Now, I understand in 3.10 there's capital works, officers are working with property and architectural services. I don't know where the community groups are involved in that. It's not explicit there, although I gather that in some cases there will be community groups involved. Although it's not clear where, although Lion is obviously one of those. Staff have obviously been consulted, and I see the open hours consultation further down. We're talking about a methodology here, and I don't really get a sense of a consistent approach across the board. What I do sense is that staff are being consulted, officers are being consulted, in some cases community groups are being consulted, and at the very, very end, the public are being consulted in terms of the three options. Could I get a wee bit more detail on what those are and what the consistency is in terms of the approach, especially where the properties themselves are concerned and the community groups involved are being consulted in some cases but not others? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've already gone out and done a consultation with the public in terms of the number of opening hours that were proposed for each of the facilities. And at that time we tried to give as much information about what we couldn't change and what we could change, or what the public could influence. And we did get some business cases back in April, where we did make an adjustment to the number of opening hours. There are differences in all of the different communities in terms of property. There are some places where there's quite a minimal amount of work required, and there are other places where we're looking at 2 or 3 different options for where services might be delivered from. So what the intention would be is that once we have got options from property services, we'll hold ward briefings, and these will be running obviously we'll have to take into account the period of recess, but we would be looking at opening hours proposals and the various different options that we have for property at that time.
So, sorry, Chair, if I can just come back. So that's ward briefings with local member. When I look at the paper, I'm being asked to note and agree the methodology for consulting with the communities. Now, that would suggest that the paper focuses on how we're going to consult with communities, but it's the very last part of the process where it's basically, there's three options available, here's a questionnaire. But the preamble to that is basically saying there's member briefings, ward briefings, staff are consulted, etc., as you would expect, but and again it touches on what Councillor Ferguson was raising about whether this is involvement, engaging, and in terms of agreeing a methodology, to me that suggests a consistency, a reasoned approach, maybe based on values, etc., but a methodology isn't something that's ad hoc. So it's really just to get a better understanding of what exactly the purpose of this paper is meant to be and what it's going to achieve.
I think, Chair, if I could just come in, I think certainly in terms of the methodology where we started on this journey with the population model, which was the starter for 10 in terms of the type of and level of facility that should be operated. We've moved on from there and we've tried to learn from year one. As Annie said, we're spending a lot of time at the moment with our design services colleagues looking at the various properties in each settlement, if you like, that could house the integrated services, and we're getting those designs costed. That's the first stage in the process. We're then going to speak to the local ward members to help to get your thoughts and your views and your expertise in terms of the locality, in terms of what that might look like, and thereafter we go to the communities with drawings, with costed options, which we can then look at them in terms of the actual physical premises, the opening hours, and how the service will be delivered. So I think we're quite clear, I think, in terms of how we're looking to take this forward. We've taken a wee while to get the costed drawings from our design services colleagues, but as soon as we've got that, the first thing we do is speak to you as local ward members, and then we go and consult the public, A, in terms of the facility, and B, the opening hours and what those services might look like.
Thank you. But I don't see that in this paper. What I see is the last point, which is 3.16. That's the bit where the community gets consulted. It doesn't actually say anywhere else that we will therefore be consulting with local communities in 3.13. But the mechanism for consulting is a questionnaire. It doesn't. I presume you would have meetings with the community, etc. I would hope that you would. And obviously the timescale would be more sympathetic to the fact that most of the communities may be on holiday or otherwise engaged, as will the members. So it's really just to get clarity of that. And also, originally I was asking, what are these three options that are going to be available, just for a point of detail in 3.16?
There are three different sets of opening hours we've tried to take into account. We have engaged with users of the various different services. So we've gone to groups, for example, reading groups that we know use different libraries, and spoken to them about which evenings are best for them, which mornings, people that we already know are using the facilities. I'm
so sorry, but could Andy speak a little bit more closely, please? Thank you.
We've already engaged with customers, and also in an informal way, as customers have been coming in, staff have been talking to them about opening hours. As I said earlier, we did do a series of community engagements in March, which related to the number of opening hours that we were proposing for each facility. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I'm quite happy to push back the timescale, because I take your point there. That is probably we could give a little bit more time.
I think, Chair, through you, members are looking for more assurances, and I take on board the point in terms of 3.1.6 that we're not paying lip service to going back to communities. What we'll be doing is making sure that when we've got these costed drawings, the questionnaire, and is there in terms of the drawings being on display, and we have that dialogue with the communities. It won't just be a case of sending out a questionnaire and getting the return.
Can I help, Chairman? I think the three options in paragraph 318 relate to opening hours. And there could be different options in different areas. What we're trying to do is to customise the opening hours of the facility to what the public want in that area. So you read 317 and 318 together, they relate to opening hours. You go back in the paper and part of it relates to where there's more than one facility in a settlement, then we will look at it, we'll look at what the respective costs would be, and we'll then present options to members to look at. We'll take a steer from members, and then we'll go out to consultation.
Right, sorry Chair, I'll just come back on that. Okay, 317 and 318, that's opening hours consultation methodology year one. That's to do with changing opening hours that are already in existence in Stranraer, which is 2.2 in the recommendation. So that's to do with adjusting some of the already integrated hours, as it were. Which begs another question, which is to do with how do then other year one integrated facilities come back and say, well, actually, we want to change our hours as well. So I'm just wondering what that consistent methodology would be for that process to kick off for the other facilities, should they wish to change it. But anyway, that aside, but it's the first part where we're agreeing on methodology that I really need the clarity on, because I'm not assured fully by the answers I've had so far. Thank you.
We come back to that one. I'll take Councillor Nicholl next.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In 3.3, work is also in progress to provide the full range of customer services in the 9 communities which currently have only a library, etc., etc. Does that mean that you're meaning to reintroduce a registration of birth, marriages and deaths in those communities as well, which don't have them? And my other part of my question is, collection of rent and council tax payments is ceasing. It's got to be done through another method from the one at the moment. Is there any saving for the council, firstly, and secondly, is there a cost implication for the customer?
In terms of DGHP rent and council tax, there's a saving. The cost per transaction is greater through a customer service centre to the council than it is through PayPoint or post office. But we make additional savings in terms of the frequency and amount of cash uplift we need from secure record type services. There's no cost to the customer at all in going to post office or PayPoint stores.
And registration?
Yes, it's something that we would hope to introduce. It might take us a little bit more time to do that because there's a fair amount of staff training, but yes, that's something that we would hope to improve across the region.
Quite sure that will be very welcomed by a lot of the communities, Chair.
Councillor Dryborough.
Oh yeah, it's just maybe a bit of feedback from year one, and perhaps something that can help when you're talking about consultation. And it's coming back to what Alistair said earlier on about, I don't want to have anything to do with the operational side of things. It's about what communities can't get involved in. And that's the terms and conditions of the employees of this council. That's done between the trade union and the employer. So when people come along and say, oh, you've cut 20 hours, we want it back up to 36, they cannot influence that because that's about terms and conditions and things like that and the negotiations that happen between the trade union and employer. So that's a bit of learning perhaps, that when you go out to communities in the future, that something that they cannot effect, it has to be between the trade unions and the employer.
Councillor Carruthers and Councillor Geddes.
Just going back to Stephen's point, I think in recommendation 2.1, Richard outlined a methodology which we'd undertake in regards to plans being drawn up, going back out, and Alec came in the back of that and said, and this will come back to committee. It isn't explicit within the recommendation. It doesn't refer to a paragraph there, so if we could agree to that methodology, it was outlined as per what Richard conveyed, and then reinforced by Alec, and that it will come back to committee for in regards to a further report. I mean, I'd be happy enough to support that, because it isn't clear energy within that recommendation as it's actually outlined.
Chairman, can I remind members that you got a report at your last meeting which you asked for, outlining where we were going with this? You've agreed that. Going back to Councillor Thompson's point, the opening hours consultation methodology for year 2 is set out in paragraphs 312, 313. And it's exactly the same as I see it for the methodology of reviewing the year 1 stuff, in that we've consulted staff, they've consulted the clients and customers. We're then going to come up with a range of options for clients and customers and go out to public consultation on it. So that covers that, and that mirrors what we're doing in terms of, and it's only Strathclyde at the moment as I understand it, but any other community, we are talking to our communities. We have staff on the ground who are very quick to tell us, my customers don't like coming in here at this time, they want to come in at another time. That's what the staff, that's ongoing engagement with the community. So that is happening, and if there's anybody comes forward and comes up with a solution for any community, we'll certainly look at it. We did consult communities and we had business cases before, and this committee actually agreed to alter the opening hours of certain premises to suit and to follow up on the community engagement that had taken place. Insofar as the buildings are concerned, we will bring that back to members once we've got, where it's possible, an option. Where it's not possible, there's where the building, and that's what's going into the building. We will do that at a local ward member level. We will then go out into the communities and explain to the communities where there are options, we'll give them. Where there are none, well, there are none. In terms of bringing reports back to committee, we are committed to bringing reports. This is why this report is in front of you. And it's maybe a reflection, I should have said, no, we don't need a report to this committee. Just let's get on with it, and we'll report to the next committee when we've done the job. But we've got feedback from members in relation to the period of consultation, which is very helpful, and we'll take that on board, and we will come back to members and tell you what the outcome of the consultation is. But your view was originally that you wanted this done at a very local level on a ward basis, and that's how we're going to take it forward.
Welcome back.
Aye, please, Chair. I mean, just in my view, we can't agree to 2.1 because they get what it is. To me, I just didn't see what that is. What are we agreeing to? What is the methodology? It doesn't refer to a paragraph, doesn't refer to anything. I could have said that about the previous reports as well, but I didn't touch on it. But here it's quite clear, and that's why I said, as outlined. It's verbally, you can back and listen to the actual recording by both Richard and yourself. I didn't come up with agreeing to there because it isn't specific at all.
Sorry, sir. Paragraphs 312 and 313 set out how we're going to go about it. We will use the community engagement, national community engagement rules to do it. We're now looking at hours of opening. We will do our survey. We will go back to individual communities and say, that's your building, that's your customer service centre, whatever. We have 3 or 4 different times when you want to open. Can we get some agreement with the community when you want to open? And that's what we're going to do. I don't see what more we can put in the report, sir.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Two issues. One's the generic type issue. The other one's a more local one. But I think we're all guilty, Chair, on occasions of using imprecise language. I would be happier. Mr. Haswell has referred towards the end of his previous submission, community engagement, and I think that is the safe generic term. But I think there are occasions when both elected members and officials use, for instance, consultation, information and involvement, when quite frankly, in the circumstances, it's imprecise. And that causes us problems. I'll give you a case in point, not involving this service or this committee, Chair, but, Council took a high-level decision that they would, implement a revised refuse collection service, and they would run it, from west to east. Now, we talked about consultation in that regard. That, to me, is not consultation, because, and it doesn't necessarily always have to be consultation. We've taken the decision for certain good and onerous causes to go down this particular route. We go out and we engage with our communities, but not on the basis, Chair, of consultation, but on the basis of informing them. So the process is informative, but too often, and I'm sure Graham has been at some of the meetings that I've been at in the Mid-Galloway Community Council circuit, when people are saying, well, you've never properly consulted with us, and perhaps the answer is, we didn't intend to consult with you. We took this decision decision. It was a legitimate decision to take. We're informing you as to how we're going about implementing it. And that's the sort of process that we should be implementing on occasions. You know, where it's as I've said, it's consultative, you need a particular methodology. Where it's informative, you need perhaps another form of methodology, and where it's involvement, you maybe need yet another form of methodology, which at the end of the day are all different but all achieve the same objective. That's the general point I would want to make, sir. The specific point that's in the back of what Graham and I have already raised, and for instance, in one of the 9 communities, and I'm talking about Whithorn. Royal Bank of Scotland, have taken the decision that they'll remove the last bank in Whithorn. It's the worst kept secret in the Shire that the post office are looking, to relocate the post office in the town. Now, there's a body of opinion which says that rather than having it put elsewhere in commercial premises, perhaps the library would serve as a good base for this, and you would build up to a genuine community hub involving not only the likes of council services, registration, payments, etc., and a library, but also a facility, which would be provided by, for want of a better term, a public utility. And I would hope, in fact, that if the community have not approached, Annie, thus far, that early contact will be made to explore that possibility, sir. I think that would be an issue which it would well serve the people of Whithorn in particular. Grateful to you, Chair, for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Geddes. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. I'm going to 2 things. I never suggested that the public could change a council decision, so I'll just put that on record. I'm also putting on record that I'm totally in support of this whole bigger process, right? Because this isn't a service cutback, this is actually enhancing the smaller areas, getting a better all-round service, and we've maybe been a wee bit remiss in actually selling it as such. Someone else took the initiative and actually said it was a cut. But to get back to my original point, at 318, we're going to have a consultation on on year 2, but the 3 options available are drawn up on the results of year 1. And totally separate, different communities. To think the lessons learned in some of the remote villages, for example, even Thornhill, Newton, Stewart, and they're no, but the town centre, to then look at in the second lot here, Port William and Lochside and Georgetown, they're absolutely totally different communities. So their needs might be totally different. That's what we're saying, is the public need to be consulted on what with the decisions being made, so then we need to then reconsult with the public to actually find how they think we should implement the decision that's already been made. I'm not suggesting they can overturn that, but then their views have to be taken into account when we do make an implementation, because all hell's got to break loose if we do the wrong thing.
I couldn't put it better, that's exactly what we're doing.
Any further questions? Okay, no further questions. We'll go to the recommendations. 2.1, I think perhaps Mr Hazel maybe needs to flesh that one out a wee bit, just for people's understanding.
I was going to say 3, but as per in 2.1, as per 3.1213 and within the recommendations, but I'd like to hear what Andy's saying as well, because it's implicit there on certainly in that first recommendation, and at least we know we can isolate and know exactly what we're agreeing to.
But we're not doing anything different that we did last year. There's been nothing different whatsoever, so I don't understand why suddenly folk don't understand what we're doing when they're perfectly happy to agree we're going down this road last year. But that's a problem I've got. Folk are inventing hurdles where they don't exist.
In terms of what Councillor Crowther is suggesting, yeah, it might have been better. It might have, on reflection, the report might have had the reference to the paragraphs in it. The paragraphs are there, and in a minute, when I get a recommendation that says, as per paragraph 3.1, I delete the words as per paragraph 3.1 in the minute, because it makes no sense in a minute. So what you've got there is a decision to agree the way forward, the general way forward. If you want to take consulting out and put public engagement, agree the methodology for public engagement, with those communities affected by year 2 integration. That maybe widens it a wee bit, takes account of the point that Councillor Geddes made.
Happy with that? No. Well, come on, Councillor Ferguson, what's the problem with that?
I'm of a mind here actually to propose something. In actual fact, I would think to ensure meaningful, genuine public consultation that we bring a report back to this committee with a revised methodology that reflects the process to be undertaken in year 2 and in a more reasonable timescale.
Chairman, we've taken on board the issue of the more reasonable timescale. I would like members to tell me exactly how they want to consult the public, given that I've got a council decision to obtemper. We have council decisions. Integration is well established as a council practice and policy. It has been since 2008. We've been consulting the public till we're blue in the face since 2008 about integration and how we're going to take things forward. We need to get the thing moving, sir. I'm sorry, I need to know exactly what members want. It's all right to say to me, you know, we're not happy with what you're saying. Right, well, tell me what you want and I'll bring you something back to give you. Better still, make it your recommendation, make it your minute decision.
Back in, Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, please. If I can be assured by Mr Haswell that the process for the new communities in year 2 mirrors the ones in year 1, then I'd be happy to take that forward from there.
It does, sir. In fact, it's been improved because we've learned lessons from year 1.
No, it hasn't, because no, it hasn't. I'm afraid. And you know, if need be, we can go to a vote on this, I suppose. But I don't want to go there because consensus is obviously the best issue here. But we haven't done the same process because the year 2 ones are actually getting a questionnaire drawn up on the results of year 1, right? In totally different communities.
No, that's not correct, sir. The year 2 ones are getting consulted on the basis of questionnaires they're being asked to complete. What we're saying is that we learned our methodology wasn't quite as good as it might have been in year 1. And I went to the public meetings. Well, I went to the ones where there was likely to be a hanging, What we're saying is we will go out and do exactly the same as we did in year 1. So while we consulted in year 1, we will consult in year 2, but we'll learn some lessons in terms of how we consult, the methodology, etc., and we're improving on what we did in year 1. We're not basing anything we're doing to people in year 2 on what happened in year 1. It will be based on the consultation with them as part of the year 2 consultation.
Through you, Chair, if it makes this any easier. So if we've got Mr Haswell's assurance that we're actually going to enhance what had happened in year 1, then I'm happy to accept that.
Well, I think that's what we've been saying right from the start of the meeting, that we've learned the lessons of year 1, and we're trying to improve on the lessons we learned in year 1. We did bring a report back to this committee about changing certain circumstances in Whithorn, I think it was, Wigton, I should say, and we learnt from that. And it's how we go and approach the public in the first instance. I think we know a better way to approach them than we did the first time. I'll take.
Thanks, Chair. So I want to take from what we've discussed to now that although it doesn't mention it in the report at the moment, the designs, as it were, the options for each building, etc., that'll form part of what goes back to the community for consultation. As was alluded to earlier, you know, the sort of building, the capital actual changes to buildings where appropriate.
What we will do, sir, is we will come back to members, local members, and say, let's take Annan for an example. There are several buildings in Annan, all of which could become the facility. We will come back to local members and say, there's the options. Importantly, there's the cost. Which one do you think the community would like best? We'll then go to the community and talk to the community. But the decision on the actual building has got to be taken proportionately, i.e. you've got to take account of costs, you've got to take account of locality, but we need the local input from members on that one. We need to make sure that members are comfortable with it. I don't think you could actually go out to a public consultation and say, there's 25 buildings, pick one. I don't think that that is a reasonable thing to ask the public to determine. You have a responsibility, a fiduciary duty, as do I, to make sure that the council gets value for money. The public don't have that fiduciary duty.
Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, it was just, I'm glad Councillor Ferguson now was kind of conceded they doesn't need to put a proposal forward, but the views that have been expressed, I think the officers have conceded to some of those things, so rather than actually put forward a proposal that comes about in the report, I think the fact on the consultation period, etc., that's all been agreed that that's got to be looked at, so that can just be incorporated into the minute along with the 2 recommendations, and that should be as everyone should be happy with that.
Councillor Dryburgh?
It may be just when you come to consultation with the community, maybe as Councillor Geddes, be informing them, because there may be, for instance, health and safety issues that we cannot use particular buildings. So it's all, quite happy to go with.
Okay, thanks very much, Chairman. I'll make it along, will I? Now, I just want to add it on to it's 316 and 318, that we should add the next couple of weeks onto them, be implicit with that.
Yeah. It's really agreed that the timescale will be increased. Councillor Thompson?
I just to save repeating myself again, that the officers or the council will go out and consult directly with communities, not only just a questionnaire. Because it's not explicit, so it's really just to make sure we know what we're agreeing.
That's what we did. That's one of the lessons we learned from last year. We left the community consultation a wee bit too late. We are already in the communities talking to people, sir.
Okay, can we agree the recommendations with all the assurances that have been given by officers to assuage the worries of certain members that we're not changing any methods, we're going to enhance things, and everybody should be happy. So are you happy to accept that the recommendations are there as enhanced?
I was going to ask you, can we get perhaps an amendment to the form of words, to incorporate that and make it abundantly clear, so that, 6 months' time, we're not scratching our heads and trying to remember. Please.
Well, I think that we'd accept the recommendations, and Mr Haswell has taken on board all the issues raised by elected members and will address those during the consultation period. Members happy with that?
That's reassuring.
Thank you. I have no further business, so thank you all very much for attending today.